7 times. That's how many times Delilah Thornfield has destroyed my garden gnomes. This morning, I watched her do it again through my bedroom window. It was 5 a.m., and there she was, prowling my driveway like a maniac, smashing ceramic faces with her golf club while the sound echoed through our quiet neighborhood. "Your ugly decorations are ruining our property value," she screamed when she saw me. "These weren't just decorations," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "They were my dead wife's collection. The only things that still made me smile after losing Sarah to cancer." "I don't care what they meant to your dead wife," Delilah snarled, grinding the last gnome under her designer heel. "They're staying gone this time." "Wrong move, lady. Dead wrong." She thought she was bullying some broken widower who'd never fight back. What she didn't know is that I'm a defense systems engineer with 6 months of rage. I was about to build her a gnome she'd never forget. "What would you do?" "Well, let me back up and tell you how this war started. My name's Julian Blackwood, and 18 months ago, I lost the only woman who ever understood why I kept spare bolts organized by thread pitch. Sarah died after a brutal fight with breast cancer, leaving me with an empty house and a broken heart. But Sarah had this weird hobby that made her eyes light up even during chemo, collecting garden gnomes. Not the cheap plastic garbage from Walmart, but hand-painted ceramic pieces with actual personalities. She'd hunt estate sales like a treasure hunter, coming home with stories about each gnome's previous life. During her worst days, when treatments left her too weak to move, she'd stare out the window at those ridiculous little faces and actually smile. After her funeral, I couldn't stand the silence in our old house. So I packed up her 7 favorite gnomes, the survivors, and moved to Willowbrook Estates, where every lawn looks like it was installed by robots, and the air smells like a chemical plant explosion. The houses here are painted in exactly 3 approved beige variations. Even the mailboxes match, standing at regulation heights like tiny suburban soldiers. The constant hum of automatic sprinkler systems sounds like mechanical breathing, and the perfectly edged sidewalks feel cold under your feet, even in summer. That's where I met my nemesis, Delilah Thornfield. Picture a real estate Barbie doll crossed with a prison warden. Her blonde bob never moves, even in hurricane-force winds, and she wears pastel blazers that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Her white BMW sports those obnoxious soul magnets that slap against the car doors like applause every time she hits a pothole. 3 days after moving in, I found her standing in my driveway at 7 a.m., clutching her HOA handbook like Moses with the 10 Commandments. The morning air carried the scent of fresh mulch and possibility until she spoke. "These lawn ornaments violate Section 4.7 of our community standards," she announced, her business card pointing at my gnomes like a weapon. The card felt thick and waxy between my fingers, expensive enough to feed a family. I pulled out my tape measure. 16 inches tall, every single gnome, well within the 18-inch limit. Delilah's smile could have frozen molten steel. "We'll see about that." The next morning, I stepped outside to find 2 gnomes murdered in my driveway. The ceramic pieces crunched under my boots like broken bones. My security footage showed her BMW lurking nearby at midnight, headlights off, but the angle hid her license plate. When I confronted her, she gasped like I'd accused her of kidnapping. "Oh, Julian, probably teenagers. You know how destructive kids can be, right? Teenagers with golf clubs and a grudge against ceramic lawn art." That's when I realized this wasn't about property values. This was about control. Delilah had found herself a grieving widower who looked like easy prey. Over the next 6 months, she perfected her psychological torture. Wait for me to replace the broken gnomes, then strike again. Accidental lawnmower incidents, mysterious disappearances during routine landscaping, gnomes found scattered like ceramic confetti after severe weather events. Each destruction felt like watching Sarah die again. But here's what Delilah never bothered to research about her target. I don't just miss my wife. I design automated defense systems for Boeing. My specialty is building machines that detect threats and respond accordingly. While she was playing her little power games, I was quietly studying her patterns, learning her schedule, understanding her weaknesses. And after this morning's massacre, Gnome number 7 destroyed in the most brutal attack yet. I finally had everything I needed to end this war. Delilah thought she was bullying some broken engineer into submission. What she'd actually done was give me the perfect excuse to build something that would make her regret ever hearing the word gnome. 3 days after the morning massacre, Delilah made her first strategic mistake. She got cocky. I was installing my new security camera system when a certified letter arrived. The postal worker had to ring my doorbell twice because I was too busy drilling mounting holes to hear him the first time. The envelope felt thick and official with Delilah's real estate company logo embossed in gold that caught the afternoon light like a warning. Final notice of HOA violation. The letter screamed in bold red letters. According to this legal masterpiece, my garden gnomes now violated a newly clarified interpretation of Section 4.7 regarding fantasy-themed decorative elements that may disturb neighborhood children. Fantasy-themed? These were garden gnomes, not fire-breathing dragons with laser eyes. The notice demanded immediate compliance within 72 hours with daily fines of $50 starting immediately. But something smelled fishier than week-old tuna. The letter was dated 3 days earlier, meaning she was trying to collect $150 in backdated fines before I'd even seen the violation. When I scanned the document on my computer, I discovered something beautiful. The PDF timestamp showed it was created at 11:47 p.m. the night she destroyed my gnomes. This psycho had written her threat letter before committing the actual crime. Talk about premeditation. The next morning, I spent 3 hours at the county courthouse digging through HOA records. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps while I scrolled through meeting minutes, my eyes burning from the blue screen glare. The musty smell of old documents filled the air as I dug deeper into Willowbrook's bureaucratic history. That's when I remembered something from my corporate Boeing days. Rule changes always require proper documentation and voting procedures. Companies can't just invent policies overnight, and neither can HOAs. Sure enough, I found the smoking gun buried in procedural documents. Every legitimate HOA rule change in the past 5 years had followed the same pattern. 30-day advance notice to all homeowners, board discussion with recorded minutes, majority vote with signatures. Delilah's new interpretation had none of that paperwork trail. She'd literally just made it up on the spot. But the real beauty came when I cross-referenced her real estate listings online. This woman who claimed gnomes disturbed neighborhood children had marketed 3 houses this year with phrases like charming garden decor and whimsical outdoor accents. One listing from last month specifically mentioned delightful gnome collection conveys with property, a magical touch for the right family. The hypocrisy was so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. I printed everything, 37 pages of evidence, and emailed the entire HOA board with my findings. Then I went shopping for reinforcements. Home Depot's garden center smelled like potting soil, fertilizer, and possibilities. I spent 20 minutes examining gnomes like I was selecting artillery. For new ceramic soldiers joined my cause. All exactly 17 inches tall, all earth-toned browns and greens, all perfectly within the original guidelines that Delilah couldn't legally change. When I placed them in my front flower bed that evening, the setting sun made their painted faces look almost defiant. Sarah would have loved the little rebellion brewing in our memorial garden. 2 hours later, Delilah's BMW pulled into my driveway. Expensive perfume wafted out when she rolled down her window, mixing unpleasantly with the sweet scent of evening jasmine from Mrs. Juliet's yard. "You got my letter, I assume?" Her voice dripped with fake concern. "I did, along with the meeting minutes that prove you're making up rules without board approval." Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of panic in her eyes. Those are complex legal interpretations that require. I held up my phone, showing her own real estate listing. "Your website proves you've been selling houses with gnomes for years, including last month's property, with delightful gnome collection right in the description." Her manicured fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That's different." "How exactly?" I asked. "Those properties weren't in premium neighborhoods like this one. Standards are higher here." There it was. The truth finally leaked out like air from a punctured tire. This wasn't about rules or property values or disturbing children. This was about her personal decision of who belonged in her perfect neighborhood and who needed to be driven out. Swift retaliation came the next morning. I stepped outside to find my garden hose sliced into 6 pieces, scattered like green rubber snakes across my perfectly maintained lawn. The cuts were clean and deliberate. Someone had used head shears to methodically destroy $60 worth of perfectly good hose. 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. City code enforcement stood on my porch looking apologetic. Complain about excessive noise from power tools, the inspector said, consulting his clipboard with obvious embarrassment. Also something about commercial vehicles parked in residential driveways. I showed him my standard Ford pickup with basic Boeing contractor magnets. Nothing remotely commercial about it. The inspector looked even more embarrassed while filling out his no violation found report. Between you and me, he said quietly, glancing around nervously, we've received 47 complaints from this address this year. 95% completely unfounded. Someone clearly has serious time management issues. After the code inspector left, Mrs. Juliet hurried over from 2 houses down. The elderly woman kept glancing toward Delilah's house like she expected sniper fire. I watched her slice your hose at 6 a.m., she whispered, her voice barely audible over the constant hum of sprinkler systems. She's been terrorizing everyone. Last month, she stole my garden Buddha, claimed it violated religious display rules she made up. That's when the pattern clicked. Delilah wasn't just targeting me. She was running systematic psychological warfare against anyone who didn't fit her beige suburban vision. Ms. Juliet's wind chimes, Bob Martinez's veteran flag, the Johnson kids' sidewalk chalk masterpieces. But she'd picked the wrong engineer to mess with. 1 week later, Delilah launched her nuclear option. My doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m., and a weary-looking code inspector stood there with a clipboard thick as a novel. Safety violation complaints, he announced with obvious reluctance. Unauthorized electrical work, improper chemical storage, potential fire hazards. The smell of his morning coffee, mixed with my garage's familiar scent of motor oil and metal shavings, as we walked through my perfectly organized workshop. This was artistic-level harassment. Delilah had apparently spent hours crafting a masterpiece of fictional violations. We examined my labeled tool storage, tested my electrical outlets, checked my smoke detectors. Everything spotless, everything legal. Whoever filed this, the inspector said after finding nothing, either has never seen a proper workshop or they're deliberately screwing with us. He lowered his voice. 3rd call on this street this month. Same complainant, same results. That gave me an opening. How many complaints has she filed total? He shouldn't have told me, but Delilah had clearly exhausted his patience. 47 this year. 45 completely bogus. She's like a one-woman fake emergency factory. Then came the beautiful part. He mentioned that repeated false reports could result in fines for misuse of government resources. I tucked that detail away like ammunition. 3 nights later, I discovered Delilah had escalated to full surveillance mode. My security cameras caught something incredible. A dark figure prowling my property at 3 a.m. Not vandalizing, but documenting, taking photos, measuring distances with surveyor's tape, cataloging every possible violation she could manufacture. The motion sensors tracked her 47-minute reconnaissance mission. This psycho was building a harassment database complete with measurements of my mailbox height, driveway width, fence positioning. She'd even taken close-ups of my gnome spacing. Time to set a trap. That weekend, I bought 2 exquisite gnomes at an estate sale. A farmer and his wife tending a miniature vegetable garden. I positioned them in my backyard, technically outside any front yard restrictions. The painted details were so intricate you could see individual corn stalks in their tiny field. The trap worked like clockwork. Monday brought another certified letter claiming my excessive ornament collection created visual pollution affecting property values. But here's where Delilah's ego betrayed her intelligence. She'd included photographs taken from inside Mrs. Juliet's yard, clearly trespassing to get her shots. Even better, The photos captured her own shadow and her distinctive BMW reflected in Mrs. Juliet's kitchen window. She documented her own crime. I called Mrs. Juliet immediately. She told me she had city permission to inspect neighboring properties. My elderly neighbor explained, her voice shaking with anger. I believed her because she sounded so official. That's when it hit me. Delilah wasn't just a petty HOA dictator anymore. She was impersonating government officials, trespassing on private property, filing false police reports. This woman was committing actual federal crimes. But I wasn't ready for lawyers yet. She declared war on Sarah's memory, and I wanted her to understand the full scope of her mistake before justice arrived. So I bought 4 more gnomes. When Delilah discovered my expanded collection Tuesday morning, 10 strong, all perfectly legal, all positioned to maximum psychological effect, she finally snapped completely.